What is up, as a figure hunter, and this review is for the Garmin Instinct Crossover versus the Garmin Forerunner 955. So we're going to talk about these head to head. We're going to sort of look at them side by side because these are both $500 watches. And so I want you to have a full evaluation of what $500 will buy you on the Garmin platform, because these are two very different variants that offer a different feature set, and I want you to be able to see it for yourself. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Please give it, consider subscribing for more. This is not a comprehensive review for the details within the Garmin Instinct Crossover. So we're going to not touch on a lot of the similarities for the feature set that is offered on both platforms. We're going to talk about the differences. And most of that is design and then features that are primarily on the 955. So if you want the full review for the Garmin Instinct Crossover, or see more about it, or hear more about it, how does it compare to the Instinct 2, you can see that in the description below. There's a link there. And if you want to jump to any section, it's all in the timestamps down below. So when you look at these watches, again, $500. Going to get you both. So what we're going to look at is the overall design and function of the Watch A versus Watch B, and then we're going to talk about the feature differences and see some of those feature differences primarily on the 955, because that's where there's a broader set of feature differences. And then we'll come back together and talk about it in summary. So with that, let's look at the watches side by side. All right, so here's how they look. Here is a similarity difference. I apologize, I don't have a traditional band. I have the Nick Manke design bands on here. So this is what the differences would be in the overall look. Now, obviously, this is color. It's got like 75, no, not 75%, but probably 30 to 40% more pixel density and clarity, as well as more brightness. It's got like crazy amount more lumens than the monochromatic display here that, even when you light it up, you can't quite see it, and this is at 60% brightness. So here you can see it clear and crystal and all day long. But these are the design differences. Like if you look at them side by side, they're basically very, very similar in the overall width, but just not similar in the overall thickness. So the Instinct Crossover is going to be about 2 millimeters thicker. I haven't had a problem with it. It doesn't bother me at all. It hasn't seemed like, oh my God, this is the biggest watch of all time, thickness-wise. So it has seemed perfectly fine. But when you look at the feature differences, that they basically both use this little spring button. The 955 actually has a regular traditional watch pin with a fat size to it, so it's got a spring button. And the Crossover actually has a spring pin that has to be depressed through there rather than trying to catch a knife in there. But they both use the same chargers. All those things you probably are already aware of if you're coming to this review site. Now, to highlight the hands, and what's cool about them is that they move out of the way whenever you go to different settings. You can still get all the feature differences, and at different times they'll move in a different direction to get out of the way, to be able to see different pieces of data. There'll even be times where it's going to serve as like a gauge, a dial gauge. Same thing in one of the workout settings. You can have a heart rate gauge where this little guy will move from the minimum to your max heart rate over here, whatever you set it to be, and it'll be like a literal, speedometer for your heart rate. So that's what's so cool about the hands, is that the hands move functionally in time with whatever the need is. When you get a notification, it's basically like they're going to get out of the way. The notification is going to be readable, legible here. But that's what's so different. Now, obviously, it's a duller pixelated screen, but at the same time, you get the functionality of hands while also having all the guts and the quality components. So what are the differences between the two? So the differences are somewhat significant. So this actually will provide you the morning report, which gives you a summary to start the day of your body battery, heart rate status, training readiness, training status, as well as the weather for the day, or some different variables you might choose to see within it. This is a device that's going to have a full set of features when it comes to running dynamics. So you have the stamina feature. It's actually got higher quality interval training. It's got live segment. It's got Pace Pro. It's got grade adjusted pace, and it's got the stamina feature, which is actually a really cool technology that shows you how your real-time depletion of energy reserves to hit the next hill or the next interval is depleting over the course of a longer workout. And then it's got mapping, so full tilt mapping, where you have the ability to access, roads, you have the ability to access trails, you have the ability to route yourself in different directions, to go find yourself a trail, build yourself a trail, and go on from there. You can get points of interest. You can do all sorts of crazy things there. So significance there, significant difference there. So the morning report, the full tilt mapping, and then another thing that maybe is important to some and is not important to others is not just music controls, but you can get a full access to a music library. So, the full Amazon Music, you can download playlists, you can download Spotify playlists, and then you obviously have the screen brilliance, and then one thing that is obviously a very big difference is the touch screen. Additionally, when you go back and you look at the running capabilities, this has multi-band, and not only does it have like dual band, it has ability to connect to 2 satellites at the same time to get you super high quality GPS, and it also has Sat IQ, which is a new technology that Garmin's developed to be able to bounce between single GPS and dual GPS or dual systems to be able to give you the best of all worlds while still conserving battery power. So that's the primary differences. So if I was going to summarize the differences, it's basically going to be that. It's basically here you have you have a little bit more robust build, you have a thicker, quality of watch, and a little bit greater depth of diving gauge, so 10 ATM versus 5 ATM. But the biggest thing you have is you have hands, so more battery life, but you have hands. So you have hands here, and here you get all the features of a prettier watch. So it's going to have the screen brilliance, you're going to have the touch screen, you're going to have some of those feature differences like the morning report that gives you your health stats every morning when you wake up. It's got music, it's got mapping, it's got multi-band GPS, it's got all the different running features that are only available on this or the Fenix 7. And then one thing I forgot to mention is it has training readiness, which is not available on the Instinct Crossover. So training readiness is another big primary feature that's missing from the Instinct Crossover. So that is the primary difference. If you're evaluating what $500 you would want to spend, what would you want to have? Would you want to have the analog? Would you want to have the sort of the cool rugged look of like a G-Shock type watch with a true watch hands that actually have cool functionality? Or would you want to have the traditional watch look of the 955? And there you have it. So what do I think in summary of these two watches? Like, what do I think? I just think there's not a comparison. In my opinion, they both offer the same core features and benefits when it comes to the primary areas of life, wellness and fitness. It is just a difference of whether you want an analog experience and maybe a rugged build or a longer battery life. But in my mind, when you look at the comparison, there are over 10 additional primary features on the 955, and some of those are significant, like full topological North American maps. So there's over 10 features that are available on the 955 and not on the Instinct Crossover. And on the Instinct Crossover versus the 955, there's one, a couple of hands. So it's up to you whether you want that particular experience, because that is the primary difference other than, like a few days of battery life. So that is it. That is the comparison between the Garmin Forerunner 955 and the Garmin Instinct Crossover. It's the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.